Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be a video about which suppressor you should buy first. And before we get this video started, I wanted to give a quick shout out to this video's sponsor, which is Seal One. Seal One is a partnership that I am truly very excited for because I use this stuff every single day. It's a product that I don't see really pushed anywhere else, and quite frankly, it is a product that actually should be. It's really good CLP that is actually bio-based and non-toxic. It comes in a liquid, a paste, and then they also have a spray can version as well. They even make stuff for bows, so if you're into archery, they have bowstring wax and cleaner, and they also have some sub-zero temperature Seal One as well. It's a great company, super good folks over there, and even better, they are now allowing me to give you guys a pretty solid discount on their products, which is 25% off of their website. Their stuff is already very affordable, but an additional 25% off is awesome. And the only thing you have to do that is to go to their website, seal1.com, and put in the discount code section FF-25. That's FF-25. And it gets you 25% off of your order. I greatly appreciate Seal One's support here on the channel. This is a question that really randomly came to mind yesterday, and that is, which suppressor should you buy first? Primarily, what we are going to be talking about in that question today is the differences of rimfire suppressors, pistol suppressors, rifle suppressors, and then we'll also touch on do-all suppressors in that category as well. And the question is going to be centered around, you're going for your first can, and you want to know what direction to go first. What are the pros? What are the cons? Now, what we are not going to be going over in this video is, should you buy a suppressor? Should you get into the NFA? So before you go down in the comment section wondering, why is this guy supporting the NFA? Why is he talking about suppressors? Just make it yourself, etc., etc. I get it. I fully understand, but I have made more videos than I can count in regards to that topic, what you should do, the pros and cons to both, and that is just not going to be in this video because it would be far too long. So this is assuming that now you've fully decided and you fully understand what it means to get into the NFA and you want to buy your first suppressor. I have made videos before as well on e-forms versus paper. That's something, if you're buying your first can, that you should be very familiar with right now. I'll try to link that up in the card in the corner of your screen. You're going to want to watch that video to get that information because it will help you out a good bit. I own personally more suppressors than I would like to think about, and unfortunately that includes paying far too much to the federal government in order to own those suppressors. In order to buy your first suppressor, the very first thing you need to ask yourself is, what am I going to use this suppressor for? Why do I want to buy a suppressor? Are you looking for what we call in the industry as movie quiet? Are you looking for something to just be quiet, have fun with it, and impress people at the range with how quiet it is? Are you looking for something for a very practical use? Are you looking for a suppressor for home defense? Do you want something for an SHTF situation? Do you want a suppressor that you are going to put through hard use on some sort of a rifle? Or are you trying to teach new people how to shoot and you want something maybe for a 22 long rifle in order to really get them into learning shooting without a very intimidating first experience? Those are questions right off the bat that you want to ask yourself because it's going to tell you which direction that you want to go. I've talked about this before in other videos, but I highly recommend for your first suppressor, whether it is a rimfire suppressor, meaning all 22 long rifle, 22 Magnum, 17 HMR, those things, a pistol suppressor, 45 ACP, 9mm, and a rifle suppressor, 30 cal, 5.56. I would highly recommend buying your first suppressor in the direction of modularity, right? The versatility that suppressor has. I almost always recommend, in this case scenario, going with a 30 caliber suppressor. Why is this? Well, yes, on a decibel meter, right? The metering that actually is going to tell you the exact decibel rating that suppressor has. A 5.56 suppressor occasionally may be a few decibels quieter than a 30 cal suppressor, but this is all incredibly subjective to the gun that the suppressor is being run on, the suppressor itself, the atmospheric conditions of the day. So I really wouldn't pay attention to that too much. But what is a 30 caliber suppressor going to give you over a 5.56 suppressor? You can shoot 5.56 through that 30 caliber suppressor without issue, and now it opens up the ability to shoot 300 blackout, to shoot 7.62 by 39, to shoot 308, to shoot 6.5 Creedmoor. It is going to open up a whole new world for you. So why limit yourself with your first suppressor? You're going through quite a bit of a headache of a process in order to get this suppressor. You're paying money to get this suppressor, and I guarantee you, because I've sold a lot of cans and it happens almost every time, once you buy that suppressor, you're really going to want to suppress everything in the collection. You're going to want to see how this works suppressed, how that works suppressed. You're going to want to buy something else just to put the suppressor on it. So having that versatility is going to be ideal. I've heard so many times somebody say, man, I wish I bought this can because I could have used it on so many other things than just one gun. If you're looking at a 9mm that you would like to suppress, look at 45 ACP suppressors. If you're looking at a 5.56 gun you want to suppress, look at 30 caliber suppressors, and so on. Immediately, what's going to come to mind is, well, isn't there do-all suppressors out there? Why wouldn't I try to find one that can do everything? There absolutely are. You have things like the Silencer Co. Hybrid, the Griffin Optimus. You have a wide variety of suppressors out there that are going to really truly be close to a do-all suppressor. However, when it comes to using a do-all suppressor, you are going to be giving up something for that much versatility. So take something like the Silencer Co. Hybrid 46, for example. That has the capability of doing everything from 9mm up to 45-70. So every handgun caliber, every rifle caliber, for the most part, that's between those two areas, it can do without issue. You can mount it on a semi-automatic handgun like a Glock 19 or a Glock 17, and you can mount it on a standard 16-inch AR-15 or a 10.5-inch AR-15. It is a very versatile suppressor. For your first can, it can kind of dip your toes into the water of being suppressed and do a lot of things. But it is also a ginormous suppressor. So you're going to be giving up things like mounting it on a handgun is going to be a little difficult. It can be done, but it's a little large. And on top of that, because it can do 45-70, it has a 46 caliber bore through the suppressor. So there's a little bit of a sweet spot. 30 cal to 5.56, not quite as much of a noticeable sound difference, but I have heard in person many times the sound difference of shooting a 5.56 through a 46 cal suppressor, and it is most definitely a little louder, noticeably louder to the ears than a 30 caliber suppressor would be. Usually there's that sweet spot of versatility and modularity, and you can go over it and you can go under it, so where it's not enough and it's too much. So it's trying to find that like right in the middle of the road. I see a lot of people wanting to go with a handgun suppressor for their first can, and that's understandable. A lot of people have handguns, not as many people have long guns, surprisingly, for just the everyday person that's out there. So they want to look at suppressing their handgun. Out of all of my experience with suppressors, and at this point it's a good amount of trigger pulls behind a suppressed firearm and a good amount of suppressors owned, a handgun suppressor seems to be my least used item. Now, I'm not talking about a PCC suppressor, a pistol caliber carbine suppressor. We'll talk about that shortly after this. A suppressor solely for a semi-automatic handgun like a Glock 19, a Glock 17, I don't find myself using that much because out of all of the cans that I have, those seem to be the least practical. It is not practical for me to have a large suppressor on a handgun for a few reasons. Finding somewhere to set the gun down at the range. It seems small, but at a range that is large, it can be a little annoying trying to, one, find a holster that can accommodate a suppressor. There are a few out there, but it is not an easy task to find one that actually works. So trying to find a holster that's going to accommodate the suppressor that will actually work. So now you're trying to figure out in your setup whether you have a bunch of kit or you just have a holster that you put your gun in so you don't have to set it down on the ground. It can be difficult to do. So finding a holster, that's kind of tough. And then also just shooting handguns in general, suppressed, and many others out there that are watching this that own cans may agree or not, it's not really ideal for me. You know, you get a very quiet gun a lot of the time, but you're dealing with the suppressor loosening a lot because there's a lot of movement going on here with the barrel, with the suppressor, and if it's half by 28, it almost always works its way loose frequently. You're also dealing with handguns a lot of the time not liking to be run suppressed. That happens more times than you would think. Even though you have a spring-loaded Nielsen device, which is in your piston, is what that's called, that threads onto the barrel, you're still having a significant amount of weight on the end of the gun that gun now has to cycle, and it can lead to problems. I personally would not recommend a handgun suppressor as a first can. Ironically, that was my first suppressor, was one that I thought I was solely going to use on semi-automatic handguns. And ultimately now, many years later, that is my least used item out of the bunch. How about a handgun suppressor for something like a CZ Scorpion, an HK SP5, or another MP5 variant, an AR9, something like an Uzi, any other pistol caliber carbine out there, the B&Ts? How is that? That, on the other hand, is phenomenal. I absolutely love running 9mm pistol caliber carbine suppressed. It's one of my favorite guns to run suppressed because it just works so well. And I have used many different pistol caliber suppressors on things like my MP5 variations and my Scorpion and other guns that I have in the collection, and it is a blast. It makes them a lot of fun to shoot. They are already typically small guns, so you're not adding this massive, cumbersome amount of weight on the end. Almost always, it just turns it into a 16-inch gun, which is still very, very manageable. And you don't feel that added weight because you have standard rifle points of contact where you're controlling that rifle. So with the weight out on the end, it's not as big of a deal as pushing out a handgun and dealing with the funky dolphin flip recoil that the gun is going to have with that suppressor on the end. And it's also a very practical setup. You can, generally speaking, fit a pistol caliber carbine with a suppressor attached into a very small bag, especially with a side folding stock. So something to think about. It's still a very practical setup. And the other thing about a pistol caliber carbine is you can get those calibers very, very quiet, especially a 45 ACP carbine. You're getting a setup that's still very capable and also very quiet. And you can use things like tri-lug attachments, which make it incredibly easy to lock that suppressor on, and it's going to stay tight the entire time. So if that is something that you own in your collection, you may want to look into a pistol caliber carbine suppressor. A lot of folks gravitate towards Rimfire suppressors for their first can for price. Out of all the suppressors out there, generally speaking, Rimfire cans are going to be some of the cheapest suppressors that you are going to see. You can look at them for as low as $200. Typically, you're between $200 and $400 for a really good Rimfire suppressor. I'm torn with Rimfire cans because they are some of my favorite suppressors to shoot at the range. They are a blast because they truly are what we call movie quiet. That means they actually do mimic the sounds that suppressors make in movies. They are stupidly quiet. It is awesome in that aspect. But for a first suppressor, what is not awesome about the cans is maintenance. When you're looking at all your suppressors, or you're looking at buying one, you do have to clean them, generally speaking. Not as much when you go into the rifle or welded together pistol suppressor world. With 22 suppressors, you absolutely have to clean them, and the cleaning is brutal. It sounds ridiculous, like, hey, I clean my guns, how bad could it be? You've obviously never shot a 22 suppressor, because after just 500 to 1,000 rounds through that suppressor, it gets pretty bad. And there's a lot of lead in that suppressor, so having little ones around the house and you're trying to clean it, scrape all that lead off, can be rather difficult. If you're going to go with a 22 suppressor for your first can, just understand that completely, and also look into potentially getting an ultrasonic cleaner that is going to really clean all of that off without having to put in a lot of manual labor behind actually cleaning the lead off of those baffles. It's also something to look at when you're looking at aluminum 22 suppressors. They're very affordable, they're very lightweight, but remember, they are very difficult to clean, and you can't put them in a lot of ultrasonic cleaners because it will hurt the material. So Just keep that in mind when you're thinking about a 22 suppressor, but they are a lot of fun at the range, and they can be very, very affordable. Finally, we can begin to look at rifle suppressors, and that is what I generally, surprisingly, end up recommending a lot of people to, because it almost always yields the most practical benefits for somebody for a suppressor to own. Why is that? Well, when you are looking at shooting a defensive rifle, they are very, very loud, and it can be very intimidating for a new shooter, and it can also be just really tough if you're trying to shoot with it. Maybe you got a range on your property, but there's residential areas semi-close. That can be really loud. Maybe you're going hunting in your area, and again, the hunting spot is not next to a residential area, but maybe it's close. A suppressor yields an incredibly practical purpose for those activities. Home defense, again, many people disagree with this, but having a suppressor to not make your eardrums bleed inside the house but still be incredibly loud regardless can be a little helpful. And finally, the overall maintenance on a rifle suppressor is relatively low. You hear the term self-cleaning thrown around a lot, and no, the suppressor is not cleaning itself with CLP around inside the baffles. What they mean by that is as the carbon and lead and debris build up inside of the suppressor, there is such incredible gas in that suppressor passing through at crazy high heat and speed that it's actually going to blow out a lot of that debris through the end of the suppressor, and you don't have to worry about really maintaining the internals of the baffles. And typically speaking, the very, very high strength rifle suppressors are actually welded together for more strength, so they're not even going to be able to be taken apart and cleaned. A lot of the time, you can really kind of throw it on your rifle and forget about it and just use the rifle with the suppressor on the end. Of course, you're going to want to make sure that your threads are cleaned in the area that you're threading the suppressor on, or your muzzle device and things like that, but it's very, very minimal maintenance. You can really put it on there and forget about it. And I find that a lot of people actually use their rifles frequently for a purpose, right? Handguns, we carry them, we shoot them, but it's a lot more rare that you're using your handgun on a regular basis to hunt with, to do other things with, right? A suppressor can be immediately put into the role of a hunting rifle as well, and that's something to think about a lot. The downside with a rifle suppressor is it is by no means movie quiet. It is very far away from that. There are suppressors out there that do a great job, that you can actually shoot a 5.56 AR-15 or another rifle and not have hearing protection on and be comfortable. But a lot of rifle suppressors out there, one, will sell you some snake oil, and two, are incredibly loud. So loud that you have to wear hearing protection the entire time you're shooting the rifle, and it almost acts like a Noveske Pig blast diverter. That's about as good as it will do, especially K suppressors. I'm sorry to tell you guys this, but everyone on the internet raving about K suppressors, yes, they hold a purpose, and that purpose is to cut the noise down if you're clearing a building or something like that, to not completely go deaf on a short gun, but they are not designed to be quiet, and they are generally not even anywhere close to hearing safe. Going with a K rifle can in the future, when you already have other rifle suppressors, you already have very quiet rifle suppressors, and now you're just looking for one to keep the noise semi down compared to just ear bleeding loud, and also keep the overall length down. That's what a K can is good for. But I've seen so many regrets on people that want this real high-speed rifle right out of the gate, and they listen to some gun tuber say, hey man, you need this K can to keep the overall length short, and they buy it, they spend $1,000 on it, and they bring it to the range, and they're like, what the heck? This seems like I'm shooting unsuppressed. In fact, sometimes it almost seems even worse because it throws a huge flame out the end, and it's just, it's not great. So I would not recommend a K rifle suppressor. There are rifle suppressors out there, again, that will do the job well, but if you're looking for movie quiet, and that's the reason you want to buy a suppressor, the rifle can is not the way. Yes, there's calibers like 300 Blackout Subsonic that can get very close. That's somewhat of a different story, but for the most part, rifle suppressors are relatively loud. And final point about rifle cans to wrap it up is they do get incredibly hot. Very, very hot very quickly. So understand that when you're running a rifle suppressor at the range and you're running and gunning with it, the moment you set that can down and it touches your leg, you're going to have a very bad day. A potential hospital trip. It is absolutely no joke. So again, something to think about when you're buying these cans. This video is going to be wrapped up with just asking yourself questions. You need to figure out exactly why you want a suppressor. You need to fully understand the process behind getting one. Do you really want to go through that process to get this suppressor? Beware of snake oil cans. You will go online and you will find suppressors for $99. You'll find suppressors for $100. These companies will be claiming that, hey, if you have a 2-inch suppressor, that is going to give you 50 decibel decrease in noise on a 5.56 7-inch barrel. It is a flat-out lie. The decibel ratings on these companies' websites are almost always cherry-picked in an absolutely perfect environment that could never ever be replicated, and then they're kind of amplified a little bit to help out with sales. Don't go by the decibel ratings. Go by a video. How does the suppressor sound? Try to hear one in person. That will help you out a lot if you can find a buddy that has a suppressor that you can go to the range with and just hear what they sound like. All of those things dramatically help in just the process of deciding which can to go with. I hope this video helps a lot of the beginners out there trying to get into the suppressor world. If you guys have any other questions about this topic or anything else on the channel, please throw them down below in the comment section, and I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, head up to the description, check out those links to support the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.